Welcome to Makers of Tomorrow, the podcast where each episode we talk with founders, industry leaders, and innovators to explore the latest trends shaping brands and the consumer experience.
We are your hosts, Karine Mallet and Corey Gottlieb, founders of Replica, the social selling platform revolutionizing how brands connect, inspire, and sell in today's digital world. So whether you're a brand leader, entrepreneur, or just fascinated by the evolution of digital commerce, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Today, we're diving into the world of American watchmaking, entrepreneurship, and modern e-commerce with our guest, RT Custer. RT is the co-founder of Vortic Watch Company, a brand renowned for converting antique American pocket watches into one-of-a-kind wristwatches, all made in the USA. RT recently launched Colorado Watch Company, a new venture offering accessible entry into American-made watches with the same dedication to the craft and legacy. In this episode, we'll explore how RT builds authentic brands that resonate with consumers, what the modern buyer is really looking for, and how e-commerce can preserve the soul of craftsmanship in the digital age. Let's dive in. Welcome to the show, RT.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
It's a pleasure to have you. So let's just start from the beginning. What inspired you to create Vortic Watch? And, how did that idea of converting antique pocket watches come to life?
Yeah, so the idea was simple. Happened on the golf course back about, 13, 14 years ago at this point, and came from a conversation with my business partner and original co-founder, whose name is Tyler. And Tyler was a watch guy. We're playing golf. He's wearing a watch on the golf course. I thought that was weird. I can't wear anything on my hands. I don't even wear a glove when I play golf. So I was just like, why do you love watches so much that you're, potentially harming your swing of, I thought you really cared about being good at golf. Mm-hmm. And it just started this really interesting conversation about why he loved watches so much. And I love how things work, how things are made. I was studying engineering at the time. And throughout that conversation, one or both of us asked, why are all watches made in China or Switzerland? Why are they not made in America? And after we played golf, we Googled it. We could not find a truly American-made wristwatch. Mm. And we thought that would be interesting. And once we got down that rabbit hole, we couldn't make it out because we discovered the history of watches in America. And, 100 years ago, people made watches in the USA, and they were all pocket watches. And there's these 10 companies that were in the late 1800s to early 1900s. And those 10 companies made over 100 million pocket watches in the USA in about 100 years. And they were the great American watch companies like Hamilton, Elgin, Waltham, Ball. Just amazing watch brands, none of which exist anymore in the United States. And the light bulb went off somewhere down that rabbit hole of like, what if we took the inside of those old pocket watches? Because most people scrap pocket watches for the gold and silver of the outside, the case and stuff. And what if we upcycled them, turned them into wristwatches? It'd be a bigger watch, but it'd be 100% American made because we can figure out how to make the bigger stuff on the outside. And the timepieces inside, the little gears and springs that tell time, we call them the movements. Those are all the guts of old pocket watches. It's this beautiful clash of old and new. And that idea, we just couldn't get out of our heads. So we put it on Kickstarter in 2014 when we left school. And the rest is history. We've sold every watch we've made since, and we call it Vortic.
That's amazing. So I have two quick follow-up questions. One, how did you play that day?
I couldn't tell you. I don't keep score when I play golf.
Okay.
So my answer is I probably played great because when I don't keep score and I don't think about it and I'm just out there hanging out.
You always play great.
I play better. Yeah. It's more fun. I played golf in high school. So the skill is there.
Right.
But now it's just to be outside.
Right. I get it. And then the second question, which is more apropos for this venue today, is how did you find all of the old watches? And how do you continue to source for old watches, pocket watches?
Currently, we buy from estate auctions. So zooming out, there was hundreds of millions of pocket watches made. That was 100 years ago. Today, people find a pocket watch in the drawer in grandpa's estate. And let's say your grandparents owned a jewelry store and now there's just 1,000 pocket watches in the back they forgot about. most of those make their way to pawn shops or those gold and silver dealers that you see everywhere, and they get scrapped for the gold and silver of the outside case. The precious metal on the outside of a pocket watch is traditionally worth a lot more than the movement inside. You know, sometimes you have Antiques Roadshow, right, where it's like a very, very rare pocket watch that's worth a lot, but most of the time a pocket watch is worth the gold and silver. And so also every day somewhere in America, a pawn shop or a jewelry store goes out of business. And there's an estate sale, or somebody like the guys on American Pickers come in and they pick and they buy the things that they want, but all the pocket watches are left over. So those pocket watches end up at estate auctions, which is like 100 estate sales worth of extra stuff that nobody wanted from the estate sales. And there are 2 auction houses that specialize in American watches. It's wristwatches and pocket watches. And I work with them to liquidate and consolidate all the American pocket watches that don't have their original cases and that no one else wants. And
all part of the research you had to do to start a company, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, well, kind of. I like to say entrepreneurs need to have some sort of delusion. And my version of delusion was, I was just like, yeah, there's probably enough pocket watches out here. Let's just do this. We had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. And we also had no idea that so many people would have grandpa's pocket watch. And that's the other way we get them, is people send us, you know, a family heirloom. It's grandma's or grandpa's pocket watch. It's sitting in a drawer. It's sitting in a safe deposit box. And they're like, what do we do with this thing? It's an heirloom. You know, I feel bad throwing it away or taking it somewhere or selling it. But it just sits in a drawer. And so we have a service called Convert Your Watch, and we're really the only people that you send us grandpa's pocket watch, we'll turn it into a wristwatch.
So both of your watch companies are manufactured in the US. How do you incorporate that in your brand storytelling?
Yeah, so initially my marketing was all about that. I said the only truly American made watch and the only 100% American made watch. And that was mildly true. You know, there's a couple other, I mean, this was 12 years ago. There was a couple other American watch companies at that point. And so people just asked, like, well, what about RGM? What about Shinola? What about Cameron Weiss? Those were the other names in my industry at that time. It became more of a distraction to the customer than a good piece of marketing. And so what I did was I changed the marketing. And I said, we take antique American pocket watches, turn them into wristwatches. They're all one of a kind. They're custom made just for you. Do you have grandpa's watch? If not, I can find one for you. If you like the concept of upcycling and saving pieces of American history and wearing it on your wrist, those are the pieces of marketing that worked so well. And then, oh, by the way, it's also almost completely American made. And now American made has become, and at that time became, a qualifier and a justification for why it's more expensive than something similar, even though there's really nothing similar. But that's how I justified that. And that's how I, pivoted the marketing away from Made in USA for that brand. Fast forward today, I have Colorado Watch Company, which is the total opposite, but there's a lot more options now.
So that's actually where I wanted to go with that is how do you differentiate between the messages for the two different companies?
Totally. So zooming out, Vortic Inc. is the company that I run, and we are a manufacturing company that is the backbone of the American watch manufacturing industry, not just watchmaking, but manufacturing. So I am building the Swatch group of Made in USA, if that makes sense. And so we're going to be the backbone of multiple brands. Right now I have Vortic Watch Company, which is pocket watches turned into wristwatches like Vortex and TikTok, a beautiful clash of old and new. The marketing is just that. The product is just that. Pocket watches turned into wristwatches. That's a Vortic. It will only be that. Colorado Watch Company is my second brand. And I came up with the name because sometimes people forget the word Vortic. It's a made up word. They're like, it's that Colorado Watch Company that turns pocket watches into wristwatches. So I already won the SEO for that brand, even though the brand didn't exist. And so I went out and bought the trademark for Colorado Watch Company. And now Colorado Watch Company is the most American-made watch at scale today. And the mission of Colorado Watch Company is to make an attainable price point, not affordable. It's closer to $1,000, but it's still $1,000. It's a luxury watch but it's as American as possible. Right now, we're 85% American made, which again makes us the most American at scale. I like to say at scale because obviously there are amazing watchmakers that can make a couple hundred watches a year, and that's awesome. They're making everything in-house, fantastic. But at scale means thousands. I mean, and ideally thousands per month. Like we're trying to compete with the Swiss and become a mass market brand and available in, jewelry stores and stores worldwide.
And where do you manufacture?
Thousands. Colorado Watch Company is made primarily in Fort Collins, Colorado. About half of the watches made here. We assemble them in an awesome facility down in Arizona, where they make the movements. They assemble the movements. It's a modern automatic movement. Mm-hmm. And that's really, to answer your question, the differentiation is the movement. So in Vortic, it's an antique American pocket watch movement. Everything inside that watch is 100 years old. In Colorado Watch Company, that is a modern automatic wind as you move your wrist type of movement, more similar to like a Rolex. And that movement, the automatic in Colorado Watch Company, it's called the Americron. And that is the only American assembled modern movement at scale.
This might be a crazy question, but I would imagine that Grandpa's pocket watch has been sitting around for many, many years. For the most part, doesn't work.
Yeah.
So when you refurbish the guts of that pocket watch, I'm guessing you have to have some compatible pieces and parts that would get that thing back up and running again?
Yeah. So first step is having the labor to be able to do it. And in today's world, the skilled trades are dying off. And so the average age of the American watchmaker is approaching 70. Mm-hmm. There are not very many people that know how to restore an American pocket watch. And a few of them sit right through this wall right next to me, and they work for me, and we restore the pocket watch. So most of the time, we are able to restore them using all original components, using all the parts that they have. That saying, they don't make them like they used to. That should be our tagline for Vortic. It's these things are little engines meant to go. So we replace typically the springs, and we try to use either new old stock components or components that we make or have made for us that are exact replicas of those components. Think of it like if you find an old Bronco, right now that's everybody wants is a vintage Bronco, all original. If you find one that's all rusted out, somebody that does a retro mod on it and makes it all modern and it's not all original, that's probably worth good money because it's very popular. But somebody that goes and takes the 3 years that it would take to go find all original parts and makes it perfect. First of all, there's only a few people that can even have the skill set to do that.
Sure.
But if you could find all those original parts, now it's worth 3 to 5 times more because it's all original. That's what we do. That's our differentiator. We do restoration. We don't just do a cleaning of the pocket watch.
How long does it take to do a refurbishment of a watch?
Yeah, so a good watchmaker, if you have all the parts, can restore a pocket watch in 1 to 3 days. Now, we always have 200 or 300 in the queue at any given time. We're backed up usually about 6 months. If you sent me Grandpa's pocket watch today, it's going to be at least 6 months until I send it back to you as a wristwatch. And it's mostly because of that restoration process. And the bottleneck is the master watchmaker that it takes to do that work. Your pocket watch is in our safe and in line until the watchmaker has the time and the bandwidth to actually get it done. But yeah.
Let's talk a little about the business. Go ahead, Karine.
Yeah. So who is your target customers for each brand?
Totally. So for Vortic, our target consumer is primarily men. I would say 40 plus. And it's not necessarily the age is less about anything more than an appreciation of American history, and a financial bracket, right? Typically on average, to be able to look at a watch for Vortic, they're $3,000 to $15,000 a piece. So to be able to look at that price tag and not be stressed about it, typically you're a certain age or have a certain amount of wealth. And those are my guys for Vortic. The sub demographic inside of that tends to be American entrepreneurs and small business owners, people that they not only appreciate history, but they appreciate American made, and they feel like they're not just buying a watch, they're investing in a fellow entrepreneur, which is me.
Right.
So that's
Just
Vortic.
you mentioned American made. I know we spoke about this before, but tariffs do not affect you, but it affects your competitors, I would imagine.
I accidentally built a pandemic-proof and tariff-proof business. Yes,
Good for
we are
you.
not touched by either of those things. We don't have very many people. We have 10,000 square feet of manufacturing. So during the pandemic, we sat 10 feet apart. Didn't have to worry about the 6 foot thing. We're cutting metal right here in the building. I don't have any suppliers in China, so all the shutdowns of all our suppliers didn't affect us in the slightest. And then in today's tariff age, for Vortic, not impacted in the slightest, absolutely not. And then for Colorado Watch Company, 85% of the watch is American, 15% comes from outside the USA, but that 15% is from suppliers that are, massive companies that have been doing this for a long time. And most of that 15% is from India and not China. And so the tariffs don't have a huge impact, thankfully.
So you're an e-commerce brand. How do you find your customers and then build like loyalty and trust with them?
So the best way I've found to build loyalty and trust with customers is a couple kind of mantras that I live by. One is show, don't tell. I don't just tell you that it's made in America. I leave my door open and I say, come and do a tour. Let me show you. I put everything we do on YouTube. I say, flip the camera around. Let's show you. And with that, I also say to my team and with my team, document, don't create. I think Gary Vee said it first, but we don't have to create any marketing materials or some amazing advertisement to sell you on why you should buy an American made watch or a Colorado Watch Company wristwatch. We just have to flip the camera around and say, look, we're cutting metal today. Check it out. This metal could be turned into a watch that you could wear. I build the story into the product and I just put it all on YouTube for free. So that's how we initially build trust. And then most of my marketing is done via email marketing. So I became I called it an armchair expert in Klaviyo and email marketing in 2020. When the world started shutting down, it's like, okay, I can't do trade shows anymore. It's going to be hard to sell to retail stores. It's what do I do? How do I get out there? And I started sending a weekly email newsletter, and I've hit send on a weekly email newsletter for 5 years in a row every Thursday. And that email list is now up to 50,000 people, and the open rate's about 75% at this point.
You actually have not experienced a drop off in open rates or conversions on email marketing. You're actually experiencing an increase
every day. Yep. And it's because what we do is authentic storytelling. I write words people actually want to read. I send you pictures of watches via email. Every watch is one of a kind, so it's worth reading. And every watch has a story. And so I tell stories about American history. It's like, did you know in 1929, that's when they built the Navy Pier in Chicago? And maybe somebody was holding this pocket watch that was made in 1929 while watching somebody build the Navy Pier. And that watch was also built in Chicago. So somebody in Chicago reads that and like, well, got to buy that watch, and so I give you a reason to open those weekly email newsletters. I never sell. I merely educate. And yeah, even with paid traffic, constantly growing that list month over month, year over year, the open rate continues to go up and the click rate does too.
Amazing. That's an incredible story because as you well know, in today's world, email marketing has been less and less effective. Influencer marketing is less and less effective. The more you use it, the less effective it gets. And you're actually flipping that on its head because you're also giving real authentic content that is relevant to your audience, that's interested in your brand, and it all kind of works together.
Yeah. I mean, if you do things the right way, it's going to work. If you're making up stories, if you're crafting this narrative to try to get eyeballs, it's not authentic, and people see right through that. And the cool thing is, SEO is changing too, because AI can see right through all the BS, right, and it knows whether I'm actually doing what I'm saying I'm doing or not, because it has the brain of a million people all looking at my data at the same time, and it's watching every YouTube video I put out. and it's saying, yeah, okay, these guys are making watches in Colorado. Let's put them at the top of that list when somebody Googles American made watches.
Amazing. Right?
Do you have any other sales channels for each brand?
Vortic is primarily direct to consumer. Just I use Shopify and Klaviyo, and most of our marketing is done through email marketing and direct to my website. I do trade shows. There's a big trade show in the watch industry called Wind Up Watch Fair. The biggest one is in New York City, but they do New York, Chicago, and San Francisco. They just added Dallas once a year in each place. And that's really cool. It's free. It's open to the public. It looks like a trade show, but like you can walk in and just buy watches. So that's always fun. And then for Colorado Watch Company, I'm going to do wholesale distribution worldwide. So I have retail margins built into that product. Hopefully, about 6 months from now, you'll walk into your local watch store that sells Rolex, Omega, all that other stuff, and there'll be a little American flag in the corner above our watches that are the only American things in the building.
So that would be their first really foray into wide scale distribution and retail channels.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it because, like I said, it's the most American watch, and it's the only one that's at scale. And so I think for those stores, really any retail store, you're trying to figure out how to get people in the door. And so you can say, hey, there's this new company. It's Colorado Watch Company. We just got them in. I only have 15. That's all they could allot us. You got to get in here and you got to see them in person before we sell out. And everybody loves that. If you own a store, it's like, okay, hopefully they lure those customers in with my product, and hopefully they buy my product. But worst case, maybe they leave and they bought a Rolex, which retail store just made a lot more money anyway.
You think so? So I guess, the kind of question that's popping up in my head is you must have a very high rate of returning buyers because you're engaging a large number of them on, your regular communications. They understand your value. We're making the obvious assumption that the watches look great and they work well. So do you feel like, and maybe you don't have a comparative analysis, but do you feel like your rate of returning customers is relatively high based on, other industries or other products that you may see out there?
Yeah, I can tell you for a fact that it's off the charts. We have a 60% return customer rate within the first 12 months, just for Vortic. So 6 out of 10 of my customers buy a second watch within the first year, even at thousands of dollars. And they're stoked about it. A lot of our customers are starting little collections. They want, we name the watches based on where they were originally made, based on which company made them. So we have, the Chicago, which is an Elgin pocket watch. Elgin is just outside Chicago. So they might want the Chicago, they might want the Boston, they might want the Springfield, they might want the Cleveland, and they might want a little collection of one of each because they're all one of a kind. So they look totally different. And so we have a lot of customers that are collecting them. And then we don't have enough data to tell you directly, but massive overlap in customers from they buy a Vortic watch and then they find out through our email marketing that we also own Colorado Watch Company, which is a less expensive watch. And they're like, well, I might as well buy one of those too. I'm still supporting the same people and creating American jobs. And so massive amount of our Vortic customers also have purchased a Colorado watch.
It's interesting. I've been seeing a lot of on Instagram when all these big sports stars show up to different events, they evaluate the watches that they're wearing. And I don't think any of them are one-of-a-kind timepieces, honestly. They're all maybe limited in distribution, but they're all $400,000, $500,000, $600,000. And, I mean, what's the price point of a Vortic watch?
Yeah, $3,000 to $15,000 is our range. And that Colorado watch is it's going to be $800 to $2,000. Right now, it's $1,200 to $2,000. I'm working on a third product that'll be sub $1,000. But yeah, it's always interesting. Like value in the watch industry is hard to calculate.
Yeah, I mean, you're giving somebody a one of a kind timepiece. Yeah. You would think that would be the goal of most rich and famous people, but instead they're going for the flashier and flashier models that just have the higher and higher price tag because it kind of shows, I guess, how much money they have. I don't know.
Yeah, people make decisions differently, right? I know some very wealthy people that drive Honda, cars, right? Because they don't care about that. It's not about what they look like, or they don't need to have an expensive car.
Sure.
And I know some people that don't have a lot of money that have very expensive cars, the total opposite, right? And so in the watch industry, it's what does this watch say about you? And what a Vortic or a Colorado watch says about my customers is that they care about American dreamers like me. They want to invest in the American dream. They want to own something that says, when I wear this watch, I bought this watch because I created or I helped create another American job. I invested in another American entrepreneur. And why don't we make it here and not there? And that's one market, like we talked about. Another one is a conversation piece. For Vortic, it's, to your point, it's one of a kind. So you can buy a one of a kind watch for less than $10,000.
Seems amazing.
It's a conversation piece. Everybody else in the room is wearing a Rolex, and Rolex makes 1 million watches a year.
Sure.
It's like, yeah, that watch was more expensive and very well made. Rolex is a great brand.
Beautiful.
But there's probably someone else in the room that has almost the exact same one. So a Vortic really stands out, especially when you're with your watch friends. They're like, whoa, what is that? That's cool. Yeah, I've never seen that before.
Are your watch
you get that a lot.
sold overseas or just in the US for now?
Less than 5% of our revenue comes from outside the US. And I can tell you why, more so than we market just to America and they're American made. And we only make 300 watches a year. So that's for Vortic. Colorado Watch Company, one of the reasons I like the Colorado Watch Company brand first is it says everything about us in 3 words: who we are, where we are, what we do, what we stand for. I mean, it's everything in 3 words. But also, everyone loves Colorado. Colorado is a great brand worldwide. And so people, I think, once I put my watches on shelves in other countries, in Asia, in Europe, they'll be like, oh, I've never heard of Colorado Watch Company, but I've heard of Colorado, and that's cool. And these are different. These are American. That's awesome. And I think it's going to stand out massively. And I expect at least a quarter of Colorado Watch Company's revenue to come from outside the U.S.
Incredible. So you mentioned a very loyal following, and you mentioned a very large group of targeted people on your email newsletters. So how do you engage your customers and let them tell your story? Because we've been talking about how you tell your story and the value proposition, but do you ever tap into user-generated content or how people feel so they can tell their story and resonate with other people?
Yeah, I for Vortic, I really haven't tapped into that much. I've considered creating a community for my customers so they can, talk to each other.
Maybe periodically.
I think that's interesting. Periodically we have customers to, take wrist shots or selfies and send them to us. We have some really cool pictures of our watches in high profile rooms or in different situations. Especially one of the watches we make is called the military edition, and the pocket watch inside was flown on a B-17 in World War II. So it's just like the coolest piece of military history. And so people, take wrist shots of that watch, like on the beach in Normandy, and in different places that it probably was in World War II, which is always
that
really
must
cool.
Give you chills sometimes, right?
Yeah, I mean, I get to do this, right? I'm an entrepreneur. I can wake up tomorrow and do something totally different. It doesn't matter, but I choose this every day because my customers are awesome. And the product we make the coolest watches in the world right here in this building. So why would I not do this? But yeah, so for Vortic, we haven't really explored that much. Colorado Watch Company, though, our mission is to build, like an ambassador program that involves not just affiliates, but influencers and true ambassadors and people who are going to talk about the brand. Mm-hmm. We have our watches on some famous people, like, John Krasinski has a Vortic watch. Kevin O'Leary has a Vortic watch. Michael Kelly, who was co-star with John Krasinski in the show Jack Ryan, and now hopefully soon a movie Jack Ryan, which will be cool. They're both wearing Colorado watches in that movie, which is awesome. So I think we can really start a groundswell with Colorado Watch Company, and the way I'm starting that is with merchandise, and not just watches, but like, if you sign up for my Colorado Watch Company email newsletter, you get a free beanie or a hat or a t-shirt, and you can rock the brand even if you can't afford or don't need a watch right now. I love, connecting with those customers and trying to get the brand out there. And like I said, the brand is cool and people don't know it exists yet. So it's kind of like, if and people love that stuff.
This is our second podcast, actually, where the entrepreneur created a brand with the state in which they are originated in
Yeah.
is part of the brand itself and part of the name of the brand also. And I think it's brilliant because two very popular states, this one's Cali Strong, and you're obviously Colorado Watch Company. So
Yep.
great American brands and, touting the fact that, what that value proposition is right in the name. I think, you said it best before where the name of your brand in 3 words really says everything you need to know about what you're getting and what the value proposition stands for.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, everybody loves Colorado. It doesn't matter who you are. It's
I'm a big fan.
It's a great place to visit. And that's what we talk about a lot is just like, hey, we can tell you that we make watches here all we want, but hop on an airplane. We're an hour north of Denver. Get over here, navigate the Denver airport, and come out here, and we'll show you. We do tours all the time. We love showing people what we do, and we're an open book. Nothing we do is a secret. We're just making watches.
I think that's also really unique. We're all used to, in wine country, going and doing wine tastings and so forth, and going behind the scenes a little bit. I can't think of many other brands, though, or even types of products that are built that has an open door like that, like invites you in to be a part of how it's made so you really understand the value of it.
Yeah, I think a lot more brands are doing that now. But that idea for us came from we're here in Fort Collins, Colorado, the original home of New Belgium Brewing. I think there's 35 breweries in Fort Collins here. So if you like beer, you can come for the beer and the watches. But New Belgium had this amazing tour program where you could go and they'll show you how they brew everything for years and years. And that they were always like the reason people came to Fort Collins. And so now hopefully we can be that. And it's like, hey, while you're in Colorado, we're not that far from Denver, come up, and it's a lot cheaper than going to Switzerland if you want to see how a watch is made.
No doubt. So what excites you for the future? Tell me what 3 years from now looks like.
Yeah, 3 years from now, I will structure either with private equity or with one of the big players in our industry, a roll-up in our industry that I call the Swatch Group of American Made. Mm-hmm. So right now, we are currently the manufacturing backbone at scale of American watch manufacturing. And I want to do that for more brands. I get constant requests from other companies like American watch companies that want to make at least some of the watch here, whether it's the case or the dial or just some of the parts, so it can be a little bit more American. Mm-hmm. And so at that point, we can either merge with them or partner with them and do more here and have not just Vortic Watch Company and Colorado Watch Company, but maybe 5 or 10 brands that are all aligned with that mission of let's make it in America, or at least let's try as much as we can.
That's pretty exciting. So one more quick question for you.
Yeah.
What would you tell RT on the golf course that day when you discovered it? Now that you've been the entrepreneur since 2014, what advice would you have given young RT after his 18 rounds of golf with no golf club on?
So I would have said, leave the corporate job earlier and raise more money. Take more risk while you can. I take a lot of risk. I mean, it's dangerous to be an entrepreneur. Every single day I could lose it all. But now I have a family. I have 2 little kids, a beautiful wife who's also an entrepreneur. None of us are afraid of risk. But if had a corporate job that was great right out of school, that paid the bills, and I honestly wouldn't be here without it because it's how I bought a house, and then I obviously leveraged that house to get business debt and all that kind of stuff. But at that point and at this point, I know that there's so much capital and so many people like me, future me, that are willing to invest in young, hungry entrepreneurs willing to take all the risk. I should have started that burn faster and earlier. I should have found more investors earlier and people to partner with earlier and gone bigger faster. And I think it would have been a little bit faster of a ride and might have been a little more fun. The last 10 years were fun, but I might have been able to collapse that 10 years into 5 if I just fully did it at that
But you're
point.
in a great place now. Looking back, you say, all right, the journey was exciting, the ride was fun, and now we're where we want to be, right?
Oh yeah. Well, that's now that I know all that, that's what I'm doing now. I'm taking as much risk as I possibly can because there has never been a better time to manufacture products in the USA.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm 10 years ahead of everybody else.
Amazing. Well, for entrepreneurs listening who are building their own e-commerce brands, especially in the niche product space, thank you so much for sharing your journey and your passion with American watchmaking. For our listeners, if you want to check out these stunning timepieces or follow the story further, head over to Vortic Watches, that's VORTIC watches.com, or coloradowatch.com. RT, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That was super fun.